Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Age of Apocalypse, we're going to pick up with Factor X issue number 3 as the first issue we're going to cover in today's video. And so getting into the opening pages of this issue alone, we do pick up at the kennel. Now, the kennel is well known for the idea of keeping all the mutants who, when their powers had manifested, they turned to animal-like creatures. And so you have most likely Dark Beast and also Sinister put all those mutants in those types of prison cells in all one location to use them for their own experiments. Now, you did have one of the mutants being able to escape, and you do have Havok go out of his way to try to take down this one particular mutant. Now, you do have Havok getting some help from Cyclops, and really, their conversation is really important because what happened at the end of our last video. Because remember, in this reality for Havok, he hates Cyclops with a flaming passion. The man wants Cyclops gone. He feels like he's better than his own brother. But also for Havok, he had discovered that Cyclops has been helping prisoners escape from Apocalypse prisons. Like, for example, Polaris. At the end of our last video for Factor X, you had Cyclops go out of his way to help her escape. But he had no idea that he was being watched by Havok. And so for Havok, he feels like he can use that information as a way to finally get rid of his brother. But he's not going to tell Cyclops what he knows just yet. But now we have to jump over to Jean Grey, but we have to remember that in this reality, Jean Grey never got with Scott Summers. She never got with Cyclops. Instead, she got with Logan, better known as Weapon X in this reality. And so for Jean Grey, her and Logan was working for the Human High Council. And the thing was, they had discovered the Human High Council planned on dropping nukes across North America. And the reason why, because Apocalypse is the ruler of North America. He's the main enemy in this reality. And so they're kind of hoping to use the nukes as a way to get rid of Apocalypse, but also make sure to hit his capital. And the capital would be Manhattan. And so for Jean Grey, she kind of realized that there are mutants and humans who have been trying their best to escape from Manhattan, but really North America entirely, to get away from Apocalypse. And so her goal was to go back and help those people be able to get out of North America before they get bombed by the nuclear bombs that the Human High Council plan on using. And so we currently see her trying to break into one of the prisons that's being watched over by Havok. And so while you have her trying her best to sneak in, unfortunately, she does get caught off guard by another mutant from the kennel, some wolf-like character. Now, at first, I thought it was Wolfbane. I could be wrong here, but either way, once she's distracted, you didn't have Havok being able to sneak up on her and knock her out. And so just like that, Jean Grey has now been captured by Havok. But now we have to jump over to Club Haven. Now, Club Haven is technically owned by Angel, right? And the thing is, it's neutral ground, meaning that you are not allowed to attack the other side, your enemy. So for mutants and humans, they cannot fight against each other inside the club. Now, there was this singer known as Scarlet, and Scarlet is a human who was secretly dating Havok. And the reason why it's a secret, because for Apocalypse, mutants are not allowed to get involved with humans, especially when it comes to having children. And so for Scarlet, we had learned that she was a spy. We had no idea for who yet. Well, this page right here tells us that she is a spy for the Human High Council, the same people who want to go ahead and blow up North America. And so once she walks into work, she's confronted by the Bedlam brothers who work for Apocalypse. And earlier on, they had captured a character known as Karma. And with Karma, she had told Apocalypse and her forces that Scarlet is a spy. And so the Bedlam brothers came here to, well, arrest her. But the problem is that who is going to tell Havok that his girlfriend is really a spy? Now, we jump back over to Havok, right? And when we do, we pick up with Havok wanting to show Scott Summers what he has. And of course, it's Jean Grey. Now, with these next few pages, we're kind of diving into us learning a little bit more about the history between Scott Summers and also Jean Grey. Now, let's not forget, because for Scott Summers and Jean Grey, they never were together in this reality, but there was a point where Jean Grey was captured by Scott Summers. Now, while she was a prisoner for Apocalypse, really more Mr. Sinister, it allowed Mr. Sinister to be able to get DNA samples of both Scott Summers and Jean Grey. Now, Scott had no idea what Sinister was doing in his lab, but it allows Sinister to be able to create Nate Grey. And we have been covering the whole X-Men series, so that's where that comes in. But when it came to Scott Summers, he planned on releasing Jean Grey. And with Jean Grey being around, it kind of shows Scott Summers like, maybe he's on the wrong side, that what Apocalypse is doing is completely wrong. Now, when it came to Scott, he wanted to free Jean. The problem was Logan came for her. As we saw in the earlier parts of our coverage, Logan came for her. They got into a battle. Scott was able to blow off the hand of Logan, but you had Logan being able to take one of Scott's eyes as well. Now, for Havok, he truly believes that the entire time Jean Grey was released by Logan, that Scott and Jean Grey must have been working together, because it's Havok saying, brother, I saw you free Polaris. I saw you try to go out of your way to help her escape. And so because of that, I believe that you and her, Jean Grey, have been working together this entire time. Now, you had Jean Grey kind of confused because she's all like, what are you talking about? Because Jean Grey has no idea that Scott Summers have technically turned into a good guy. But you do have Havok use two members of the Guthrie family, Cannonball and also Catherine Guthrie, his younger sister, to be able to take down Scott Summers. And after doing that, Scott and also Jean Grey have now become prisoners of Dark Beast. And this kind of leads into the ending of the book, because you do have Havok leave Jean Grey and Scott Summers behind for Dark Beast to play with. But here's the thing, because for Jean Grey, she was able to use her powers to allow Scott Summers to use his optic beam to send Dark Beast flying into a wall to knock him out, to allow them to break free. And you then have Jean Grey inform Scott Summers what is coming very soon to North America. The whole idea of nuclear bombs dropping across the entire country, especially here in Manhattan. But her main goal is to free the people in the prisons in Manhattan, especially the one they're at right now. And so now it's Scott and Jean Grey going to work together to hopefully free those people before the bombs can officially drop. But now we have to jump over to Apocalypse. Now, when we do, it's really more of Apocalypse wondering what he has heard is technically true. The whole idea that Havok had just took out Scott Summers, that Havok is now in charge of the pens, the prison that was created by created by Mr. Sinister. And so for Rex, he tells Apocalypse that what he has heard is technically true. Now, for Apocalypse, he says, you know what? Go ahead and tell my new commander this right here. Shut down the prison. Shut down the pens. And the reason why, because that whole entire prison was part of a project that was being used by Mr. Sinister when he was working for Apocalypse. But Sinister is no longer around. And so for Apocalypse, why in the world should he keep that prison around? That entire project belonged to Sinister. Somebody's calling a traitor right now. So go ahead and shut down that project instantly. But now we have to jump over to Astonishing X-Men issue number 3. Now, before we dive into the opening pages of this issue, I kind of want to sit down and briefly explain what Astonishing X-Men is all about. Because, okay, when it comes to Astonishing X-Men, really, when it came to Age of Apocalypse, you had two different X-Men books, Amazing X-Men and Astonishing X-Men. Astonishing X-Men really did focus more on Rogue and a few members of her team, because the X-Men got word that when it came to Apocalypse, he will have culling events across America, like for example Chicago, but the one in Chicago will be done by Holocaust, the son of Apocalypse. And so when it came to Holocaust, he was heading over there to begin the event. And so you had the X-Men, or really Rogue's team, head over there to kind of help evacuate the area. Now, in our last issue, you had Sabretooth try his best to hold off Holocaust long enough to allow Rogue's team to evacuate the area. But at the end of that issue, we saw Sabretooth lose the battle against Holocaust and most likely was taken in as a prisoner. And so as we get into the opening pages of issue number 3, we really pick up with Wildchild here. Now, for Wildchild, he was with Sabretooth when it came to confronting Holocaust, except right after they had learned that there was this facility, this factory that Holocaust was using that's nearby, you had Sabretooth tell Wildchild to get out of there so that he can share what they had learned with the rest of the X-Men, while you had Sabretooth fight against Holocaust to hold him off. Now, we do pick up with Wildchild trying his best to get away. The problem is that he's being chased down by some Infinites who supposedly work for Holocaust, but of course work for Apocalypse as well. But the thing is, while you have Wildchild trying to get away, one of the Infinites is able to shoot him right in the back. So just like that, Wildchild is supposedly down. Now things get even more interesting because you didn't have Holocaust appear. Now for Holocaust, at first it seems like, okay, you know what? Wildchild will now be a prisoner. No, for Holocaust, he now wants to be, well, some kind of performer, put on a show. A top hat appears, a cane appears. He wants to dance with the body of Wildchild. And for the Infinites, they're very confused because Holocaust, the son of Apocalypse, is always so serious. Why in the world is he acting like this at this moment? And so you did have everyone realize, oh, this is not Holocaust. This is Morph, who's pretending to be Holocaust as a way to save Wildchild. And you didn't have Sunfire being able to take out the Infinites just like that. But you didn't have Rogue appear. Now, for Rogue, she wants to know, what in the world is going on here? Now, for Wildchild, he is a mutant, but his mind is not like a normal person's mind. His mind is more like a wild animal. And so he's not really able to communicate like normal people do. And so for Wildchild, he's kind of like, hey, I have to tell you something, but I can't use words. And so you have him lick her face. Now, yes, it does seem disgusting, but it's Wildchild showing Rogue, hey, I now know how your powers work. I have to touch your skin in some kind of way so that you're able to look into my mind. And so as he licks her, he touches her skin, and just like that, she goes into his mind. And she finds out Holocaust has taken Sabretooth as a prisoner. And so now they have to hurry to go save his life. And so now we have to jump over to Sabretooth. Now, when we do, it's Sabretooth waking up and realizing that, one, he lost the battle against Holocaust. Now, he first thought he won the battle against Holocaust, but not knowing that technically he had lost. But also that now he is a prisoner of Holocaust. And what Holocaust has done now is taking Sabretooth over to that factory, that facility that he talked about in the last issue. And he says, this is the heart of Apocalypse Empire. And we do learn here that this factory is a processing factory, basically meaning that using this factory as a way to create different types of creatures or beings to be used in the war against the humans. So like, for example, the Infinites or any other kinds of creations the Apocalypse uses to fight against the humans. And so for Holocaust here, once he's done his factory, they should have a big enough army to take out the human race in North America or possibly across the entire world as well. And so you didn't have Holocaust continue to beat down on Sabretooth and take him inside the factory. And that kind of leads us into this flashback. Now, this flashback for me is really important. Let me explain why. Because it kind of shows that bond between Sabretooth and Blink. Because in the flashback, it's Logan and Sabretooth breaking into one of the many bases or facilities that's currently being controlled by Apocalypse. And they were supposed to leave. But for Sabretooth, he realized there's somebody still inside there they had to save. And he was right. It was a young girl. And that young girl would be Blink. Because remember, in this reality, Blink and Sabretooth were kind of like Wolverine and also Kitty Pryde, or Wolverine and also Jubilee, where he was kind of like that father figure for those characters. And the same goes for Sabretooth and Blink. And so as we jump back into the present day, it's really more of Blink expressing how she feels for Sabretooth. Like, he's that person who was in her corner. She was that person who kind of needed help, and he was there for her, but also taught her how to be a fighter, how to fight for what's right. And so you have her trying to express to the rest of the X-Men how important it is to go out of their way to save his life. Now, you also have Sunfire get very upset with Morph, and honestly for a good reason, because for Morph, he never takes anything serious. He's always this jokester. But for Morph, it's more of like, yes, I know that we're going into a big battle or a big war down the road. I know people are going to die around me. But when it comes to me, when I die, I want to die with a smile on my face. So it's more saying like, don't worry. Yes, I may always be joking, but the thing is, I'm still taking everything serious the best I can, because right now, y'all need somebody who can at least be happy for those small moments in the world. And so now we jump over to Bishop and Magneto. Now, for Magneto and Bishop, they are continuing to have this conversation of the whole idea of how to bring back the old world, the old timeline. Because you know what? Just in case I have anybody who's, again, joining our coverage of this event, let me explain how Age of Apocalypse came into the picture. So it all began with Legion. For Legion, the man believed that if he went back in time to kill off Magneto, Charles Xavier should be able to achieve his lifelong goal: mutants and humans being able to live together in harmony. The problem was, Legion did not kill off Magneto when he went back in time. He killed off Charles Xavier on accident. And so with the death of Charles Xavier, it had brought in a brand new timeline, this dark timeline, Age of Apocalypse. Now, when it came to Bishop, he was one of the characters, really the only character, who got stuck from the old timeline in this new timeline. And so for Magneto, when he had went into the mind of Bishop thanks to Rogue, Magneto had learned that this timeline should not exist at all. That matter of fact, the old one is a whole lot better than this one. And so you have Magneto trying his best with all the different X-teams out there to hopefully find a way to bring back the old timeline. Now, with all that being said, when it comes to Magneto, he's kind of wondering right now, can Bishop kill off Legion? Because one of his plans is to send somebody back in time to stop Legion as a way to bring back the old timeline, to make sure that Charles survives. But it's Magneto saying, if I send you back in time, Bishop, can you promise me that you'll kill off Legion to keep Charles alive, to bring in a better world? But while you have the two characters talking to one another, the alarms go off because somebody is about to attack the base of the X-Men, and most likely it could be Apocalypse. Now we get into the ending of this issue where we're picking up with the X-Men, the astonishing X-Men being able to break into the facility being controlled by Holocaust. And so with them being able to break in there, well, they do find Sabretooth. The problem is that it looks like he was badly beaten, possibly killed off. He's just hanging there. And so we're kind of left to wonder where this story could possibly go. And so with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe. But guys, see you on the next comic book video. Later.